Hello, greetings all of you. Today we will talk about reproductive system. First of all, I will tell you about pelvis. Pelvis is divided into two parts by the pelvic brim, which is formed by the sacral promontory. The ilopectineal lines are located laterally and the symphysis pubis anteriorly. Above the brim is the false pelvis, which forms part of the abdominal cavity. Below the brim is the true pelvis. After this, I will tell you about false pelvis. As you see on the screen, it is bounded behind by the lumbar vertebra, laterally by the iliac fossa and the iliacus muscle, and in front by the lower part of the anterior abdominal wall. After this, true pelvis will come. True pelvis has an inlet, an outlet, and a cavity. The pelvic inlet or pelvic brim is bounded posteriorly by the sacral promontory, laterally by the iliac pectineal lines, and anteriorly by the symphysis pubis. Then, pelvic outlet is bounded posteriorly by the coccyx, laterally by the ischial tuberocytes, and anteriorly by the pubic arch. The pelvic outlet has three white notches. Anteriorly, the pubic arch is between the ischiopubic rami, and laterally are the sciatic notches. The sciatic notches are divided by the sacrotuberous and sacrospinous ligaments into the greater and lesser sciatic foramina. The pelvic cavity lies between the inlet and the outlet. It is a short curved canal with a shallow anterior wall and a much deeper posterior wall. After this, I will tell you about pelvic fascia. Pelvic fascia is formed of connective tissue and is continuous above with the fascia lining the abdominal wall. Below the fascia, it is continuous with the fascia of the perineum. The pelvic fascia can be divided into parietal and visceral layer. The parietal pelvic fascia lines the walls of the pelvis and is named according the muscles it overlies. Where the pelvic diaphragm is deficient anteriorly, the parietal pelvic fascia becomes continuous through the opening with the fascia covering the inferior surface of the pelvic diaphragm. In the perineum, it covers the inferior urethra muscle and the perineal membrane and forms the superior fascial layers of the urogenial diaphragm. The visceral layer of the pelvic fascia covers and supports all the pelvic viscera in certain locations. The fascia thickness and extends from the viscus to the pelvic walls and provides support. The parietal peritoneum lines the pelvic walls and it is reflected onto the pelvic viscera and becomes continuous with the visceral peritoneum. After this, I will tell you about most important nerves of the pelvis. First one, sacral plexus lies on the posterior pelvic wall in front of piriformis muscle. It is formed from the anterior rami of the fourth and fifth lumbar nerves as the anterior rami of the first, second, third, and fourth sacral nerves. The fourth lumbar nerve joins the fifth lumbar nerve to form the lumbosacral trunk. The lumbosacral trunk passes down into the pelvis and joins the sacral nerves as they emerge from the anterior sacral foramina. After this, part of the anterior ramus of the fourth lumbar nerve emerges from the medial border of the psoas and joins the anterior ramus of the fifth lumbar nerve to form the lumbosacral trunk. This trunk now enters the pelvic by passing down in front of the sacroiliac joints and joins the sacral plexus. The obturator nerve, it is a branch of the lumbar plexus that emerges from the medial border of the psoas muscle in the abdomen and accompanies the lumbosacral trunk down into the pelvis. It crosses the front of the sacroiliac joint and runs forward on the lateral pelvic wall in the angle between the internal and external iliac vessel. On reaching the obturator canal, which is devoid of the obturator membrane, it splits into anterior and posterior veins that pass through the canal to enter the adductor region of the thigh. I hope these all information will help you in the reproductive system. Hope for the best. Thanks for watching this video. Take care.